Good morning and welcome to Read On. I'm David Green, and when I say read on, that's what I was just looking at. This is Pastor Abilities, and today we're going to talk about the relentless return of the Sabbath. Every preacher, every Bible teacher knows that week after week after week, you have this responsibility to prepare a lesson that is fresh and relevant, and it can be challenging as you come in week after week. Then there are those certainly, there are those of us that would like to coordinate and give our musicians a chance to know what's coming up on Sunday mornings in advance. Choirs take time to learn lessons and to prepare for special events. And so it's best that we give them a little bit of time and help them prepare for that. I'm David Green. After more than 3 decades of being a pastor at churches, small and large, I have been there, done that, and I have some tips on how to plan your sermons. Now, I'm going to say there are some of you that will be skeptical. Just trust me. Let's walk through the process. If you will trust me with about 30 minutes of your time, I'll walk you through a process that will help you get to where you want to be. Now, I should start at the outset by saying there are different ways of approaching the work of preparing sermons. I have a very good friend, a colleague in West Texas, who believes the Spirit moves him week to week for what it is that he's going to preach. I believe the Spirit moves just as well, but the Spirit can move with about 2 or 3 months of planning if I see that working as well. Now, that said, if you have a series that you're preaching or a set idea for how your sermons are going to go, and something comes up, there's a significant event. We're going to have a 25th anniversary of 9/11, 9/11 this year. That was an event where pastors the following Sunday needed to throw out anything they had prepared because there was such a dramatic national event that had captured our attention and quite literally shut down air travel for a period of time. It was a very difficult time with people just trying to get home. And you need to respond to moments like that within the life of the congregation when there is a tragedy. I think of the time when I was a kid. A young woman was very severely injured. There was very little opportunity for her to survive, and she did survive a terrible car crash. And but I can remember on that Sunday morning where the pastor had spent Saturday night, pretty late into the night, at the hospital in the emergency room in the ICU with this young woman's family. And when he got to the church on Sunday morning, there was no reason for him. I mean, he prepared his sermons early in the week, practiced them on Tuesdays. There was no reason for him to preach that same sermon. There was very much reason for him not to. So as I say this, I do believe in planning far in advance, pretty far in advance, the sermons and lessons that you're going to have. And I believe that this is the week of the year to do it, that week between Christmas and New Year's. Your families have been busy with Christmas. You see, I still have my tree up behind me. It'll be up for a few more days. I'll keep it up probably until the 6th of January, but the 12 days of Christmas, keep it up through those. But this is the time of year when you have a few days that you ideally can set aside a couple of days just to look at your sermons and lessons for the next few months that are coming up. So here's the first step. The first step is going to be to identify key dates that are coming up, key events. Now, in my tradition, the next event is going to be Easter. I should back up. First step is to get yourself a good planning calendar. My denomination puts together a planning calendar, and let me come over to January because I've got all kinds of notes. And I use this in the church's worship committee meetings. You can see it does give you the week of Sundays. Now, when I prepare my own planning calendars, I always put Sunday at the end of the week. I know, Sunday's the first day of the week. I read about that in the Bible. I know. But my tradition looks to the day of resurrection, the Lord's Day, Sunday, as the day of worship. Other traditions will look to Saturday, the 7th day, as the day of worship, the traditional Sabbath. For me, this is every Sunday is a day of resurrection to Jesus Christ. Now, I show you this planning calendar. You can find your own. You can also Google the dates that are important to your church for Easter and Pentecost. But I will tell you that in my tradition, every Sunday is the day of resurrection. Every Sunday is the day of resurrection. That's why my tradition worships on Sundays and not on Saturdays. Now, whatever the dates are important for your calendar. I know, for example, that at the end of June, the congregation where I'm preaching on the last Sunday of June wants to recognize the birthday of the congregation. It was established at the end of June in 1848. I know in Texas that constitutes an old congregation. I'm aware that some of you will laugh at that, but Texas was independent. Was barely a state in 1848. Was independent in the early 1836. Went from being part of Spain to Mexico to being an independent nation in fairly rapid succession. And so we didn't have missionaries coming into Texas until the 1830s, Protestant missionaries. I say that, and I always acknowledge the Roman Catholic missionaries might have beaten us by 1 or 2 centuries or more. But anyway, so this is the planning calendar. This is important because it tells me what the liturgical Sundays are. Now, this has lots of observances that I simply don't include. Ecumenical Week of Prayer for Christian Unity and Racial Intercultural Justice. No, I'm not going to include that. Presbyterians affirming Black Lives Matter. I will affirm that Black Lives Matter, but I will not affirm the organization by that title. That, as best I can tell, hoodwinked a lot of money from people. But go look it up. Anyway, so on Sunday mornings, the day I want to look for are the days Easter. In the 1840s and 50s, 1940s and 50s, this was not on the planning calendar. Easter this year lands on Sunday, April 5th. Sunday, April 5th is Easter. So I know that I'm going to want to plan through Easter to help my musician. And that's a very doable achievement for a half day to a day really a half day of work. You can get through to Easter fairly easily. But that means I need to back up. And then there are other days, like Palm Sunday lands on the 29th of March. That leaves, with the 29th of March there, that leaves Holy Week is that week in between when you break the month. But then when you count back from Easter and you go back 40 days, not including Sundays, and you get to Ash Wednesday, let's see, you're going to be in February. Where does it land? February 18th. So as you prepare your planning, you want to make note of that. If you're in a congregation that observes the liturgical seasons, and even if that's just changing the colors of the cloth, that's the decorations that are in the sanctuary, that's something that you want to pay attention to. You also have the Epiphany of the Lord. That's the day you observe that the Magi, came to bow down before Jesus, the King of the Jews, which is ironic because I think of the stronger historical cases, they showed up on December 25th. There's so much fun stuff when you study that part of the Gospels. But so these are the dates that you want to pay attention to. So you have Epiphany of the Lord, you have Baptism of the Lord Sunday on the 11th. And so these are some of the dates that you want to pay attention to. Now, you also want to discern how it is that you're going to plan these dates out. I recommend working with pencil and paper, pencil or pen and paper. But I had a planning calendar right here, so I could hold that up and say, you want to use one of these, and now I can set it down somewhere within reach. You want to have a planning calendar that you can work with. An example of a good planning calendar, and I've worked with these for a number of years. Let me call that up here. Well, that just didn't work at all. So let me take that away. Call up a different screen share here. So sorry about this riveting technology here. Here we go. So this is a window that will take you there. It's the Ziegler Performance Planner. I've used these for a number of years. It's less expensive than a lot of the other calendars and planners that are out there. I find this to be a very helpful. It starts off with your goals for the year, and I find it to be a very helpful quarterly review to go back and keep track. if you walk through the process of the Ziglar Performance Planner, and I make no money if you go click on the link, go to ziglarsales.com. I have no financial interest in your using this calendar. I just find it to be exceptionally helpful. But I also encourage you to use a notebook. I meant to pull down my notebook for this, but a notebook with divider tabs, January through December, and that will be very helpful to you. So the next thing I want to point out here is, as you see the calendar, the preaching schedule that we've had, we're through the end of the lessons that I've published this Sunday, January 4th. So, preacher, that gives you about a week from where we are today to get your next, really through April 4th is the goal, 3 months of calendar, April 5th. That's the goal right now, just to get your sermons and lessons planned out through Easter time. So, what are ways that you can plan out your calendar through Easter time? Let me remove that, pop this back up. Sorry, I'm arm wrestling the technology today. That was not what I had hoped to be doing. So let's pull that down. I can't find where that post is, so let me remove that. And we're just gonna stop that screen share and start up another screen share here. I have many open tabs here, so I'll bet this is in. Nope, I have many open tabs here. So here's what we're going to do is I'm going to, up here it is. Now I have found it. So I mentioned to you that I have my liturgical calendar, my calendar, my Presbyterian planning calendar that I use to keep me on track on the dates. I also use 8.5 by 5.5 paper. That is my preferred paper size. I have a printer right behind me that prints in black and white on that size paper. That becomes important. If you prefer working on letter size paper, I certainly understand that. I find that the smaller notebooks are easier for me to transport from place to place. And so I'm more likely to carry them with me and have them it's just easier for me to travel with those. And so what I do is I'm Presbyterian. I go to just Google Presbyterian liturgical calendar, and that takes me to pcusa.org. That's my denomination's website. And I will say, if you go to that front page, you'll see lots of statements of stuff that I don't agree with, but we're a broad group within the Presbyterian traditions. But let me share this screen here. So this is what you find when you come there. And it takes you to something called the Revised Common Lectionary for Sundays and Festivals. Now that is now I mentioned some of you are not going to love the way I do this because you are reluctant to use the lectionary as a tool for planning your calendars, your sermons and lessons. Now, there are two ways to approach this. There is the first way to approach it and say, I'm going to preach a lectionary text every single Sunday. And that's not how I approach it. I prepare my sermons and lessons with the lectionary in sight so that I know what other preachers are talking about. I find that actually to be helpful in conversations with other clergy colleagues. But I also find that I actually do preach the lectionary probably 40 or more weeks out of the year. I find it to be a helpful tool in keeping me consistent going through the Bible, not just the books that I love. If I were left to my own selection, I probably would preach 6 months of the year out of the Gospels. And that's a good thing to do. But if that's all that I do, you lose the beauty and the majesty of God acting through time. I do not believe that God of the Old Testament is different from God of the New Testament, that God is one God forever and ever, for all of eternity, from pre-beginning to after the end of time as we know it. God is unchanged and unchanging. And I think that if I don't have a tool that puts me in a mind to preach through different books of the Bible, often I won't. I do like to deviate in the summertime, take a month and go through one of the minor prophets, very often a book that's not in the lectionary, or as I did this past summer, the book of Amos showed up on the lectionary, but it showed up, I think, on 3 or 4 Sundays, and they were not even all together. I took the book of Amos. I spent 5 weeks in it, and we went from beginning to end of its, I think it was 9 chapters. We went from beginning to end and did a much deeper dive into the book of Amos. I find that to be helpful to know. This book is coming around on the lectionary, but I did not preach it as it was set out in the lectionary. This is still a helpful tool. Like I said, hang in there with me, even if you're thinking, nope, we don't want to do it. So the liturgical year begins on the first Sunday of Advent. And this year we happen to be in year A. I know that because it's small here for you to see it, but it says that right here that we're in year A. December 7th was the second Sunday of Advent. And so now let's see if this goes with me. It did not. So I'm sorry that I'm going to have to stop sharing and bring up a new screen. Let me go back to share screen. I'm going to just share this whole screen, and there we go. Screen 2. Share. So you're going to get this screen, whatever it is that I happen to call up on it. I can make that. Nope, that does not work. So November. This is November 2026. Let me back up. So when you go back in and you start, this is the text for December that you had that walks you through December. We've been there, done that in December. This brings you into the text for January. Now keep in mind, January, February, March, April. The goal here is to get through the Easter Vigil on April 4th to the resurrection of the Lord Easter Sunday on April 5th. So start by taking a quick review. Note some of the general trends that you have here in the lectionary. You see Isaiah, James, and Matthew showing up here. Matthew 3, Matthew 11. Then you go back to Matthew 1, Luke, a quick smattering of the Gospels. But you do see consistently text out of the book of Isaiah. This is probably a good time for you to preach out of Isaiah, seeing these texts. Oh, you get some out of Jeremiah, but it jumps right to the end of Jeremiah, but consistently still out of the book of Isaiah. So you see what I'm doing here just by taking this quick glance. That was January, February. Oh, you get into the book of Micah, but still in the context of Isaiah. And so then back a little bit to the Exodus, but Isaiah is consistently, the book of Joel shows up. And then you follow your way into Romans. This is the year we get to spend time in Romans. My first year, I tried to be a lectionary preacher, and I saw Romans, and I thought, I've done a deep dive academically in Romans. And what I learned was in my first year of preaching, I was not ready to preach that many Sundays with fresh sermons out of the book of Romans. And that's probably the year I decided that I was going to take the lectionary and tinker with it just a little bit here. So you also have the 23rd Psalm showing up in March. So this is just a good start of what you're going to see. You also see as we get closer to Easter Sunday, the Gospel of John makes its appearance. When you get into March, notice that you have the Gospel of John 1, 2, 3, 4 Sundays leading up to Palm Sunday out of the Gospel of John. And perhaps you want to do then all the way up to Palm Sunday, which takes Matthew suddenly out into the Gospel of Matthew. So this is how I begin by approaching this. We're going to have some Sundays going back to January. We're going to have some Sundays where we will preach out of the book of Isaiah. Let's start with that. We will, at the end of the month here, at the end of this season, this quarter, we will have some sermons coming out of the Gospel of John. And so we're going to work with that also. Now, I tend to do this with a paper Bible in front of me. I just, my mind sees it better when I'm doing my planning using a paper Bible, and I just dropped my planning calendar to the ground here. So let's go on back then to the month of January. So we have, and I say that, I'm going to call up, I do very much not like that I have to unshare and then share more stuff later, but I have to unshare this screen. Goodness gracious, I am struggling with the electronics today. This is what happens when I don't get up early enough. Stop sharing there. And let's come on back. There we go. So I'm going to call up and share the Bible now. We're going to share the screen. Oh, actually, I didn't need to do that because I was sharing the whole screen. My apologies. We're going to go back and do that exactly what I was just undoing. We're going to call up now the Bible software, and I'm going to get it to take up the whole screen here. And so we're going to take a look. Let me split this screen. This will make it easier for you to follow. We're going to split this screen half to the Bible and half to this revised common lectionary here. So January 4th, we already have the sermon text selected, but notice Isaiah, Psalm, we have Ephesians, Acts, 1 Corinthians. These are great chapters, the very beginning of 1 Corinthians. So we're going to start here with this Sunday because Isaiah shows up. We're going to take a look at Isaiah 42. Oh, what a hoot that I've been in Isaiah very much for personal study this past month. So when you see the text here that's the 6th. I should go my Sundays are going to be the 4th and 11th. We don't do a separate ceremony here for the 6th. So I'm going through to Isaiah 42. Behold, my servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom my soul delights. I put my spirit upon him. He'll bring forth justice to the nations. This is a great text. If you're going to be preaching this text, this is a great way to introduce a theme from now on through Easter, because you have here, you're going to look at the Lord's chosen servant. And that allows you to choose from Isaiah. That allows you to preach through the Gospel of John. It allows you to pick up some other texts along the way. You'll notice that I like to preach in themes or break these down into series. So where we are now, we're going to have on that first Sunday, Isaiah 42. And that'll be the sermon text for January 11th. So now we've got one Sunday down. This takes you all the way through verse 9. Behold, the former things have come to pass. The new things I now declare before they spring forth. And part of this context is that people have been carried off into exile. They've lost everything. They've lost everything they know. And it's gone. It's just gone. And the Lord says, behold, I'm doing a new thing. Even you can see this, can't you? In the voice of the Lord is very accusatory in that sense. Even you can see this, can't you? That's how I translate. That's back up earlier before this. But now you have the servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom my soul delights. I put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. I believe this is a prophetic statement about the Messiah, about Jesus, the Christ. And so that's how I'm going to preach this text. I'm going to go back into the context of Isaiah. We're going to dwell there, and we're going to get all that we can out of this text in its context in Isaiah. But I preach this text because I believe it is a prophetic witness to the birth and the life of the Christ child, of Jesus. So now that gives us January 11th. Now notice when you get to January 18th, the next Sunday, you have Isaiah 49 showing up here. So we're going to go ahead and go to Isaiah 49, the first 7 verses on this one. Listen to me, O coastlands. Give attention, you peoples from afar. The Lord called me from the womb. From the body of my mother, he named me by name. He named my name. He made my mouth like sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand, he hid me. He made me a polished arrow. In his quiver, he hid me away. Now, this is very interesting, this text. Is this Isaiah speaking? Is this a successor to Isaiah speaking? Is this a prophetic voice of the Lord? This is going to leave you something to really ponder. Going down to verse 7, and I highlight lavender purple through the voice of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel and his Holy One, to one deeply despised, abhorred by the nation, the servant of rulers, kings shall see and arise, princes, and they shall prostrate themselves because of the Lord who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel who has chosen you. Do we begin with verse 49:1? Do we go to the verse 49:2? I'm inclined on the 18th to preach from Isaiah as well. And so that would be Isaiah 49, 1 through 7. And you may also note of these other readings that when we get into the worship service, and I have other places where scripture is used, the call to confession is always words of scripture. The call to worship, the call to confession, and assurance of pardon, always and without exception, use words from scripture almost every Sunday. I mean, like 48 weeks out of the year, 45 weeks out of the year, I'm choosing out of these other ancillary texts for the sole reason that I want the people in the pews to hear the whole word of God over time. Then when you get down into the 25th, so you see how I'm going through this. So this is something I encourage you to do, is to start with this, but we're going to jump ahead in the few minutes we have left. I'm going to jump ahead into, we're going to go into March, because what we see here is the Gospel of John shows up on March 1st, March 8th, 15th, 22nd, and it does not show up on the 29th, but it uses instead this text from the Gospel of Matthew. And so what I will do here, 1, 2, 3, 4 Sundays, I can tell you now, I'm going to preach a sermon series March 8th, March 1st through 22nd, March 1 through 22. I am going to be preaching a sermon series here on the Gospel of John. I do this because I now have 4 texts right in a row that are their lectionary texts, but the people in the pews don't need to know that. That's not. I mean, it's important for you preparing, I guess, to know you're going to hit the Gospel of John every few years. But I think for the people in the pews, it's important to know we're going to take 4 weeks and we're just going to jump into the Gospel of John. And in truth, I might take week 5 also, but it's Palm Sunday. And I really am going to want to get to those walls outside of Jerusalem. I'm going to want to get Jesus onto that animal, going down from the Mount of Olives through that road into the Mercy Gates, into Jerusalem. And we'll talk about that when we get to the end of March. That's a big whoop-de-doo. I preached that wrong for 30 years, went to Jerusalem, and it's, oh my gosh, I missed it. Now I know, and I'm going to make sure you know too when we get there on Palm Sunday. Stuff important to know. But now you know, so you're trying to plan these out for 3 months. Well, guess what? You've got 1 month planned right there, because you know now you can begin advertising a sermon series on the Gospel of John. And you can take any 4 texts out of John's Gospel. I will probably take the 4 texts here out of the lectionary. But you know now, you can say in January that that now you are going to be preaching out of the Gospel of John. Joel, I see posting on Facebook, you thought that would be a challenge. It really is, Joel. I mean, it's you have your first, second, third year of preaching, and if you've had the privilege of going to graduate school, you come out with lots of excitement of things you've studied and you want to share. It gets harder after that. And I'm also aware that in the United States, the majority of people serving churches in the role of preacher, the majority of people serving the role of preacher. Now, this does not include Latter-day Saints or Roman Catholic churches, and I'm not arguing whether they are or aren't Christian. I'm saying they have a very different tradition about leadership and teaching. They each have their own traditions. But for the Protestant churches, the mainline Protestants and Baptist churches especially, you will find the smaller congregation is the rule. The average church today is going to have fewer than 75 people in worship each week. That's an average sized church in the United States. So now you don't have money for a seminary trained pastor. You don't have in every community somebody like me with lots of graduate degrees, but because of a disability, really am only able to work a few hours a week. And the church is so gracious in accommodating my ability to their schedule. We don't have that partnership. So you have pastors who have a full-time job who need to preach on Sunday morning. And that's hard. But that's also why a half day doing this, we've been at this for 30 minutes, and you've got 6 Sundays already on the calendar of what it is that you're going to do. I encourage you, preacher, take this. Now, you don't, I'm using this lectionary tool that I found on the on the website for the denomination Presbyterian Church USA. There are lots of places that you can find it. There are theological libraries that put this online. I encourage you to start with a revised common lectionary. This is going to be shared across many denominations. Okay, not Baptist, but y'all can use it anyway. I find it to be a useful planning tool. But that means that really now you've got a couple of Sundays in January, and January, one Sunday in January, and the month of February. And so, oops, I skipped over that. Oops, I accidentally deleted the month of February, but it's still out there. But that leaves you just 1 month that you're responsible for finding and putting the text together. And I find this to be very helpful because now you can tell your worship leader, if you're going to follow the themes through Isaiah, you may or may not want to preach this particular text. That's Easter Vigil for those that do Saturday evening services. You can still use it on Sunday morning. The 23rd Psalm pops up in here. The 23rd Psalm all by itself is a great sermon series. You can do the 6 verses of the 23rd Psalm, or you can even break it down a little bit. And if you do that, I promise your musician is going to have a half dozen wonderful songs, whether you use rock and roll style music or the dusty pipe organ on Sunday morning. There are great songs that work through the text of the 23rd Psalm. And that's something that will be very helpful for you in working with your worship leader. So these are how you start in mapping out your sermons. Now, I wasn't going to take time today to do all of those sermons. It's 13 weeks, but we've already got 6 that you can see. You're going to do an Easter Sunday sermon. You're going to do a Gospel of John series towards the back end of Holy Week, or of the Lenten season. These are helpful for you to know. So I encourage you to use a tool like that and start with a piece of paper and a planning calendar and start penciling out the dates so that you can see them. Now, I will take these sermon texts and titles and I will put them in the top right-hand corner of a page, and I will print that on a 5.5 by 8.5 page. It's this size paper right here. And I have a notebook that's dedicated for preparing my sermons. And I do it that way because there are a couple of times in this season of the year, if I have an opportunity to visit the Texas State Historical Association, if they happen to be meeting nearby, I will sign up and go visit for a half day here, half day there. When I was preaching full time, I went for the 4 or 5 days. I made this a week of preparation. Why? Because I would get a room with 2 beds, and one bed would have each week's text and title on the piece of paper sitting out on top of the bed for a full 6 months. And when I'm listening to history lessons, when I'm hearing the stories that people would tell, I would make notes, and then I would put the notes with the piece of paper for the Sunday upcoming, and then I would combine it. So then by the end of that, which happens in early March, by the time I got through that in early March, I would have sermon texts and titles all the way through the summer months, and honestly, all the way right up to the first Sunday of December. And that's a pretty good start. So then having Advent in Christmas sermon texts and titles ready for you musician in July, and you need to have that for your musician in June or July, because that's when musicians go to their conferences to hear from publishers about new music and new songs that are coming out, new arrangements. So that's why it's important that you get that to them. I've gone a little bit longer today than I had expected to, but that's okay. That's kind of my norm. I appreciate y'all hanging in there with me for these 30 minutes, and I appreciate the comments that are being posted. I am grateful for you for doing this work. Next week, we're going to go back to the format of a weekly Bible study. It's going to be a text out of Isaiah, but you already know how I'm going to be choosing that text, and I encourage you to take time to prepare. Pastors, preachers, Bible teachers, take a half day. A half day, that's all you need to take, and you will be blessed by that for the next 3 months. If you take a full day, it gets even better than that. But honestly and truly, it should not take more than it. And when I say a full day, I don't mean a 14-hour day. I mean a full day working at a relaxed, leisurely pace with a Bible in one hand and a calendar in the other hand. And that's all you need to put all of this together. I'm going to wish you well as you go about this work, and I will see you next Wednesday right here at this same place. I'm David Green. This is Pastor Abilities. If you have questions, reach out to me, let me know. You can find me on the internet at davidhgreen.com. Send me an email, david@davidhgreen.com, and I'll be very happy to take your comments and put them into our lessons or to reply back to you. Pastor, best wishes as you go about this work. It's important. It's important. But I pray God bless you as you continue this work of proclaiming the word. As one of my mentors loves to say this Sunday morning, give them heaven. Be blessed, my friends.